Kia ora, thank you, Member Ashby, and you want that recorded? Thank you. Right, we'll move to item 14. Lucy, very patient with us, and Justine. Kia ora, so I know you don't have a presentation, but you might want to give just a brief update, and then we can ask for questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Justine Haves toku ingoa. I'm the General Manager of Regional Services and Strategy. I just wanted to do a brief introduction before I hand over to Lucy, who's done all of this wonderful mahi. But really just to acknowledge that we're returning with this work after a prior resolution from the PACE Committee to ensure that the Auckland Foundation Partnership delivers on the significant opportunity to attract philanthropic investment in Tamaki and to align that investment with Auckland Council priorities. So this work is responding to that direction that we received previously, and I'll just hand over to Lucy to outline some of the progress that's been made over the last year and just to summarise the recommendation. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou to the Chair and members. The interim funding period has provided the opportunity to redefine Council's investment in the Auckland Foundation. This partnership allows both partners to be able to leverage one another's resources and build a long-term endowment for the region. The partnership has further aligned the Foundation's work to more specific community outcomes in the last year. This includes both the long-term plan but also wider outcomes across Council, which are noted in the report. And during the interim period, it has allowed the Foundation to identify emerging opportunities within the philanthropic sector and leverage greater funding for regional priorities. It has repositioned itself to respond to those opportunities, and it's also developed a strategy to work towards financial independence from Council. These achievements have been most noticeable in the success of the new Auckland Together Fund, which has raised over 1.3 million in the last 5 months to date to respond specifically to the 2023 weather events. So the report recommends to the committee to approve a 3-year funding agreement at the current rate of investment that builds on the success of the interim agreement to continue growing long-term funds to support regional targets. And the reason for that 3-year recommendation is that it takes time to build these relationships with these investors who are at a very high level of large sums that they're looking to invest in the fund. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to take and invite your questions.
Kia ora, Lucy. Thank you very much, and thank you, Justine, as well. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Fletcher?
I just want to congratulate everybody involved. This is a fantastic initiative. It supports our community really, really well, and I'm happy to move it.
Councillor Simpson did ask me in the break, but Councillor Fletcher, second. Oh, Member Henare, sorry.
Kia ora, Chief. Look, just a couple of questions about the review of the funding agreement. Were you able to identify what contribution the Auckland Foundation has made to Māori wellbeing so far? And is there, I know that you're working towards a sort of like a better understanding. One of the pillars of the organisation is the enhancing of Māori wellbeing. Is there any sort of written dialogue of how you're going to go about that? And if so, has it started yet? And what's the sort of funding back drop down to our Māori community, notwithstanding the floods and everything that's happened in the last 6 or 7 months, weather-wise?
Through the Chair, thank you very much for that question, Councillor. So this...
I'm not. I'm just a member.
Sorry, member. Thank you very much. In
That's all right.
response to your question, Yes, the current fund, as you acknowledge, is responding to our Māori community, and the applications are currently open, and this includes the effects of response to the effects of the weather events. Secondary to that, as you mentioned, the foundation has begun its journey to understand its obligations to responding to Te Rītua Waitangi, and this is what they're specifically doing in how they're further learning, both through the all of the Board of Trustees and employees, of what their obligations and their response should be, but they're looking, and they're about halfway through developing new policy that responds to this as well. So our involvement through monthly workshops is to offer advice and guidance in this place.
Cool. Thank you.
Kia ora. Right, there are no other questions. I think it is very clear, and thank you very much. And also thanks, Lucy, for the information prior to the meeting and discussion we had there as well. So thank you. Right, all those in favour? Are there any opposed? Thank you.
And congratulations to Helen Clark for her advocacy.
Now on to item 16, private plan change from Wellsford Welding Club Limited for land located at State Highway 1 and Monowai Street, Wellsford. Got Ryan on line there, and we have Warren waltzing up to the desk. Sorry to keep you, and sorry to have you joining us after work hours, although I know you all work ridiculous hours anyway. Kia ora.
Kia ora. So yeah, I'm Ryan Bradley from Plans and Places, and this item is just about a request for a private plan change in Wellsford North. If you go to the next slide, this is just showing a bit of context of Wellsford, with State Highway 1 going up through the middle, State Highway 16 out to the west, and connecting up with Wellsford right at the top of the Auckland region. If you go to the next slide, this is now a zoomed in map of Wellsford itself, showing State Highway 1 running through the middle, State Highway 16 in the west, and then the rail line also goes up through Wellsford. And the land we're talking about is just on the northern fringe of Wellsford, outlined in yellow on that map. If you click through to the next slide, this just shows the unitary plan zonings for the area. So there's a large area in yellow, which is the future urban zone. But there are also rural areas. So the grey at the top is the rural production zone, and the brown in the bottom area is the countryside living zone. So that there's rezoning sought within that entire outlined area in blue. If you go to the next slide, this looks now just in a little bit of detail at what the private plan change request is. Covers about 72 hectares in the north of Wellsford, would accommodate around 650 to 800 dwellings, seeks a variety of zonings, mostly residential, a small neighbourhood centre, which is the pink bit on the left-hand side, and then also up the top a rural countryside living zoning where there was rural production land. And then the red outline on that map shows where they were also seeking a precinct, which adds in specific rules around how this land would be developed. If you go to the next slide. So basically this is really a procedural item. It's a clause 25 decision, so we're not making a decision on the whole thing at the moment. This is just the very first step. And so it's the start of the process. We have 4 options. We can adopt it as if it was our own plan change, a council plan change. We can accept it, which just allows it to go through the process to be notified and go through the normal process with a hearing and then a later decision. It could be rejected at this stage if it meets one of the limited grounds for rejection, or we could deal with it as a resource consent. And the recommendation in this agenda item is to accept the private plan change request. It is not something that we think should be adopted by the council. We don't think the matters for rejection are met in this case, and it's not appropriate to process as a resource consent, so that it leaves accepting it as the only real option for the plan change. Accepting it, though, just clarifying, does not mean that this would be approved. Accepting it just means we accept it, we process it, it's notified, goes through submissions, a hearing is had. At the end of that hearing, the plan change can be approved or declined on its merits after all the evidence is heard. So, yep, that's it from me. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Ryan. Very clear. Are there any questions on this one? Councillor Darby and Councillor Baker would like to move this. Councillor Darby would like a question. Over second.
Thanks. Probably for either Ryan or Megan, you know, the private plan change process is allowed under the law. We know we're in the stage where you do the coarse grain analysis and then there's a fine grain analysis. With the private plan changes, we've had this discussion before, we had it last term. Can I just have some assurance that the staff will look at this private plan change, out of sequence, land release, closely with view to this committee confirming a submission if recommended by the staff?
Through the chair, yes, and that's really the main reason we've brought it to you today, is because it is out of sequence, not by decades, but by some years, but nonetheless out of sequence. We certainly will be happy to look at whether to put a submission in. Perhaps we could either have a resolution to do that now, or perhaps we would just bring it back post notification for this committee to confirm that or otherwise. Thanks.
Chair, I wonder if there's merit in actually confirming that by resolution now. Now, we're not looking at the detail of it, and I'm not jumping to any conclusions because we haven't done the fine grain. But I'm wondering if between yourself and Chief of Strategy might like just to word something up to add on here in terms of a submission being lodged.
Yes, Councillor Dalton and I did ask these questions in the pre-agenda. There are definitely no reasons to reject, and it is only a small number of years different to the draft FDS even. But I'm happy to include a resolution of that case. It's just the issue that we couldn't come to an agreement of what would be in the submission. So that.
And I also note the applicant is the Wellsford Welding Club, which is a property development company. It's not the incorporated society of some after-hours welders in Wellsford.
Do I have any other questions?
Yeah, I've just got a question.
Brown, yes.
I mean, this is a process thing more than the actual thing itself, but the piece of land is in fact slightly bigger than all of Wellsford. So in context, it's a pretty big thing. I mean, I'd be quite surprised to see one that was the same size as Auckland come up as a private change. And I mean, it's taken Wellsford 130 years to get to that size. The welding club members are probably going to be finished welding by the time that gets filled up, I'd have thought. It might be the Wellsford Burial Club by then, but I just want to put it into... No, this is pretty big. This is... So I don't know what impact that has with the planning department, but I'm just asking.
I guess, Megan, did you want to clarify why this is slightly different and how this is we have already classified this differently to maybe other plan changes we've had?
Well, we have identified this as possible development land into the future, and it is at a more reasonable density for Wellsford as opposed to density in perhaps urban Auckland. For the committee, based on Councillor Darby's question, would allow us to consider, your comments, Mr. Mayor, around whether a submission would be required or useful from our point of view once the matter's notified and we look at more of a coarse-grained assessment, as Councillor Darby said.
Right, we'll just see. Don't know if Councillor Baker has I'm happy to second. If yeah, Councillor Sayers, are you still?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, so Councillor Sayers, are you happy to move and Councillor Baker will second? Apologies, you might not have heard the Councillor Baker.
No trouble.
Thank you.
And if it's helpful to members, just this group has met with the local community and conducted some community engagement of their own volition, and it has been warmly received so far by the community members that have attended those meetings. So it would be appropriate, I think, to accept this and to put it out to public notification.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Can we just see the motions then? Or the...
Yeah, we're just getting it typed out. What we're proposing at this stage is request staff to investigate the need for a council submission and report back to the committee as necessary.
And that would pull out the parameters we'd be submitting on, or the issues that we might.
Yes, that's right.
Is that okay, Councillor Sayers, Councillor Baker, as the mover and seconder?
Yes.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor.
If I just speak to this, I'm going to be very brief. I would probably like to see that the Part B be standard for a private plan change applications. I know that it's very difficult to knock something out, and I'm not suggesting knocking this one out, but it is very difficult given the way that the law is written. But I think we need to interrogate or give our staff, when we do accept them, I should say, for processing, I think we need to send a signal to our staff to undertake the next stage. And I think for private plan changes, I think we need to establish a pattern. So I'm probably it's my own personal view, but back to Chief of Strategy, that each time maybe the recommendation is to possibly adopt and then to also go to the next, assessment stage and come back to the committee. Because private plan changes are really difficult for this council. They do cost us a lot of money because it puts in terrain development and then other developments coattail that, and next thing your sprawl spend is happening. It's happened for decades, and it's allowed by law. And I'm not saying it's all bad, but it is very costly. If you look at it honestly, it's very costly.
Oh, look, I think Councillor Darby's just asking me to consider whether this should just be effectively a standard wording, that for any private plan change there'll be a consideration of a submission. So thanks, I'll absolutely consider that, and as I said, we'll do this work and come back to you as needed. Yep.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any other speakers. All those in favour? Any opposed? Thank you. Move on to the next. The summary of memos, workshops, briefings. Councillor Henderson, Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Any opposed? No. Right, I think we will have a quick adjournment, especially for staff, 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back to the extraordinary item which the Mayor will